Okay, I'll try and paint my picture here. So I think we're going to go through some sort of civil war or geopolitical event. I think central bank digital currencies will be tried in the majority of the world. I think that generally speaking, they will fail. I think that people will choose Bitcoin over those central bank digital currencies, which come at a very high cost to our individual liberties. And I think that we will have a society with more equality at the end, but not equality in outcome, only equality in opportunity, which is the best that we can hope for. And this comes on the backs of a monetary system with a single set of rules, no matter who you are. So we trust the protocol, not the people in charge of the money. And I think that fundamental difference sets up America for a new golden age, although I might call it a new orange age if we're going to keep on the trend here.
Get away from the gold. Yeah.
And there will be symmetry, or I should say increased symmetry between citizen and state. I think that goes a long way in restoring trust. I think a central institution that steers our country in times of crisis is absolutely mandatory, but we have to trust our country to do so. I also think this future has significantly less financialization. If you look at from the 70s till now, finance as a sector went from like 10% to 22% or 23%, something like that. I expect to reshore some industry. I don't know if that will last too long because it's very tempting to seek low-cost labor abroad, but at least for the next 2-3 decades, I think that will be true. I expect a change towards a pro-natalist stance and understanding that depopulation is actually a greater risk than overpopulation. I see more family values, and I honestly think that the Bitcoin community is already living in that future. It's probably hard to observe because we're crazy people on the internet, fully admit that. But in the small circles, we're raising families, we're growing food, we're moving to the mountains, we're preparing for a much different world than we have today. And so in that golden age or orange age, I think long-term thinking is required. You mentioned space and all these other extremely capital intensive projects. And I think those only happen in a world where we have the monetary system under control, where families can save without their purchasing power being eroded, where capital allocators can benefit from those great feats, and they'll want to take on those great challenges. And so I view America's fourth republic as something to be optimistic about, and I believe it will be on a Bitcoin standard.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great summary. And let me just add this one thing, because I think it was well said, and that is the industries in America that are now holding back productivity growth and living standard growth are all the industries that involve some sort of social dimension to consumption. I think of education, both, elementary, just both K through 12 and collegiate. I think of social services. I think of construction, which has actually now had negative productivity now for a long time. And I think of healthcare. That's 18, 19% of GDP right there. And I think of finance, right? I'm sure I'm up to a good 50% of GDP by this point. That part of our economy has had zero or negative productivity growth, meaning if you ask Americans why they are not rising in their living standards, those are the reasons. They don't complain about enough flat screen TVs on their walls. They don't complain about the cost of a cell phone. I'll tell you, not the individual consumer items. They complain about not being able to afford their apartment or their home. They complain about not being able to send a kid to college, and they complain about not being able to afford healthcare. And that this kind of consumption that we do in a set of community rules is what is utterly failing today. That's why we need a new regime that defines these community rules, right? And that's what we don't have. And that's where we hope we are, in a redefined space where we can unleash productivity again and do so in rules that everyone can count on, and we're actually work again for everyone's advantage.
I totally agree. And one comment on the real estate side, I think what's happened is that due to inflation and just general economic incentives, we've essentially monetized real estate, and also easy debt and tax benefits. But we've monetized real estate, we've monetized big tech, and they're getting an unshare fare of capital due to the monetary system incentives that we've created. And so in a world where storing the fruits of your labor, your free cash flows at the end of the month into an asset that will maintain purchasing power, which Bitcoin theoretically will do, In that type of world, we actually demonetize real estate and equities, which offers up a much more fair game for the little guy to acquire a home. And yeah, I think it just resets the incentives towards saving and an equity-based culture instead of a debt-based culture. And just those simple shifts that we can get around. For example, BlackRock buying individual single-family homes, right? We can all agree that's not a good idea. And
There's a
so,
great
yeah,
there's a great book on that general idea called The Rise of Carry by Kevin Coldiron and a couple of other guys. I can't remember, by three people, but it's all about how, as volatility in all markets is being managed and suppressed, it tends to transform all assets into money. And it's a fascinating read for anyone who's interested in that. So it's basically all of these assets that shouldn't be regarded as money become money because the volatility is so suppressed. And it leads everyone to be in more debt than they should otherwise have. It doesn't lead to inflation. It just leads to indebtedness, right? Fascinating for anyone who's interested, but it's sort of as in sync or a little bit, it's compatible with your thesis.
Yeah, that honestly, that sounds like an instant classic in the Bitcoin community. So
you should look at it. It's fascinating. A lot of it is about options trading and what's happened to the S&P, but you'd find it fascinating.
Yeah, same argument nonetheless.